The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Ambassador Zara walked through the massive doors. Her small human frame looked tiny against the towering alien delegates who filled the curved rows of seats. The Throkan representative, a massive creature with 4 arms and skin like polished stone, watched her with narrowed eyes. The Valari delegation whispered among themselves, their crystalline voices creating a sound like wind chimes in a storm. Zara had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years now. In that time, she had negotiated trade agreements, resolved border disputes, and helped establish humanity's place among the stars. The other species saw her as gentle, almost fragile. They called her Little Dove behind her back, thinking she couldn't understand their languages. They were wrong about many things. The Council recognizes Ambassador Zara of Earth, announced Supreme Counselor Vex, his tentacles writhing as he spoke. His species, the Keth, had been the first to make contact with humanity 20 years ago. They prided themselves on being peaceful negotiators, though Zara knew better. She walked to the center of the chamber, her soft-soled shoes making no sound on the polished floor. Around her, representatives from 47 different worlds watched with a mixture of curiosity and condescension. To them, humans were the newest species to join the galactic community. Young, inexperienced, and harmless. Honored counselors, Zara began, her voice clear and steady. I come before you today to address the growing tensions in the Outer Rim territories. The mining rights disputes between the Throkan Empire and the Valari Collective threaten to destabilize the entire sector. The Throkan representative, General Korth, slammed one of his massive fists on his desk. The humans should not interfere in matters that don't concern them. These territories have been contested for centuries before your species even discovered fire. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Zara smiled softly, the expression that had earned her the reputation of being too kind for politics. General Korth raises an interesting point about fire, she said, her tone remaining gentle. Humans have indeed had a long relationship with fire. We've learned to control it, to use it constructively, but we've also learned what happens when it burns out of control. She turned to address the full council. The situation in the Outer Rim reminds me of a story from human history. 2 neighbors fighting over a fence line while their houses burned around them. Neither wanted to give ground and both lost everything. The Valari delegate, Speaker Lynn, raised her delicate hand. Her species looked like living glass, beautiful and seemingly fragile. Ambassador Zara speaks of cooperation, but her species has no experience with territorial conflicts of this magnitude. Humans have been in space for barely 2 decades. 23 years, 4 months, and 16 days, Zara corrected with a smile. But Speaker Lynn is correct. Humans are new to galactic politics. Perhaps that gives us a different perspective. She walked closer to the Valari section. Your people are artists, creators of beauty that span solar systems. The crystal gardens of Valari Prime are said to be the most beautiful sight in the galaxy. It would be tragic if the fighting spread to your core worlds. Then she turned to the Throkans. And the Throkan people are builders, engineers who can move mountains and hollow out moons. Your deep space mining technology feeds half the galaxy's industrial needs. The economic impact of prolonged conflict would be severe. General Korth's expression softened slightly. Most diplomats either feared the Throkans or tried to flatter them. This human woman simply stated facts without judgment. What solution does Earth propose? Asked Counselor Vex, his tentacles now moving in the pattern that indicated genuine interest. Zara pulled out a small device and activated a holographic display. The disputed territories appeared in 3 dimensions above the chamber floor. A joint mining operation, she said simply. Throkan engineering expertise, Valari artistic refinement and processing, and human logistical coordination. Each species contributes what they do best. The chamber erupted in dozens of different languages. Some delegates seemed intrigued, others outraged. Zara waited patiently for the noise to die down. The human proposes to insert her species into our affairs, General Korth rumbled. What does Earth gain from this arrangement? Experience, Zara replied immediately. And the knowledge that we helped prevent a war that could have consumed thousands of worlds and billions of lives. Speaker Lynn's crystalline features seemed to glow brighter. You would ask your people to risk themselves for strangers? Are we strangers? Zara asked, looking around the chamber. We share the same stars, breathe recycled air on the same space stations, send our children to the same universities. When the plague struck the Keth colonies last year, human medical teams worked alongside yours to find a cure. When solar flares threatened the Andromic trade routes, Throkan and human ships worked together to establish safe passage. She paused, letting her words sink in. We're not strangers anymore. We're neighbors, and neighbors help each other. The debate continued for hours. Zara answered questions, addressed concerns, and gradually built support for her proposal. By the time the session ended, a preliminary agreement was in place. Both the Throkans and Valari would consider the joint operation. As the delegates filed out, many stopped to speak with Zara. They praised her wisdom, her gentle approach to such a complex problem. She accepted their compliments with grace, always smiling, always humble. But Supreme Counselor Vex lingered after the others had left. His tentacles moved in patterns of deep thought as he approached the human ambassador. You handled that well, Ambassador, he said, though I wonder if you truly understand the forces you're trying to control. The Outer Rim has been a powder keg for decades. Many have tried to bring peace there. Zara looked up at the towering Keth leader. Even after 3 years, his species still intimidated most humans. But she had learned to read the subtle signs of their body language, the meaning behind the tentacle movements. Counselor Vex, she said softly, sometimes the best way to handle a powder keg is to remove the powder, not the spark. He studied her for a long moment.
Your species continues to surprise us, Ambassador.
Most young civilizations are either too aggressive or too passive.
Humans seem to find a middle path. We've had a lot of practice balancing on the edge, Zara replied. It's kept us alive this long. As she gathered her materials and prepared to leave, Zara felt the familiar weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new conflicts to resolve. But tonight she had helped plant the seeds of peace. She had no way of knowing that in 6 months those same delegates who praised her wisdom would be calling for her execution. She had no idea that a single recording would surface that would change everything they thought they knew about humanity and about her. The mining operation in the Outer Rim was proceeding better than anyone had expected. Zara stood on the observation deck of the Joint Command Station, watching the massive Throkan excavators work alongside the graceful Valari processing ships. Human coordination vessels moved between them like busy insects, managing supply lines and communication networks. Captain Sarah Chen, the human military liaison, joined her at the viewport. The monthly output reports just came in, she said, handing Zara a datapad. We're exceeding projections by 30%. Both the Throkans and Valari are impressed. Zara smiled as she reviewed the numbers. More importantly, they're working together. 3 months ago, their ships wouldn't even share the same space lanes. Now they're coordinating mining schedules. Through the reinforced window, they could see a Throkan heavy transport docking with a Valari refinery ship. The two vessels, so different in design and purpose, moved together with practiced precision. It was a sight that would have been impossible just months before. Ambassador, Captain Chen said, her voice dropping to a more serious tone. I've been meaning to ask you something. Some of the crew have been wondering about your background. Your personnel file is pretty sparse for someone in your position. Zara continued watching the ships outside. What kind of background should a diplomat have, Captain? Well, most ambassadors come from political families or they're former trade negotiators or academic specialists. But you, Chen hesitated, you seem to understand military tactics as well as anyone I've served with. Yesterday, when you suggested repositioning the defense satellites, that was solid strategic thinking. I read a lot, Zara said simply. History, military theory, psychology. It helps in negotiations. Before Captain Chen could respond, an alarm began sounding throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and the automated voice announced, all personnel to emergency stations. Unidentified ships approaching. All personnel to emergency stations. Zara and Captain Chen rushed to the command center, where the station's mixed crew was already at their posts. The main screen showed a formation of sleek black ships emerging from hyperspace. Their design was unlike anything in the current galactic databases. How many? Zara asked Commander Thex, the Throkan officer in charge of station defense. 57 vessels, the massive alien replied, his forearms working multiple control panels simultaneously. Configuration unknown. They're not responding to our hails. A new voice cut through the comm system, speaking in heavily accented galactic standard. Attention mining station. You are trespassing in sovereign hegemony space. Cease all operations and prepare to be boarded. Captain Chen frowned. Hegemony? I've never heard of them. Zara had. She recognized the ship designs from classified intelligence reports that most diplomats never saw. The Skarn hegemony was a militaristic empire from beyond the galactic rim. They had been expanding slowly for decades, conquering and enslaving entire species. The Galactic Council had tried to establish contact years ago, but the hegemony had responded by destroying the diplomatic fleet. Commander Thex, Zara said calmly. What are our defensive capabilities? Limited, the Throcan admitted. This is a mining operation, not a military base. We have 12 security ships in the station's defensive systems, against 57 warships. He didn't need to finish. The lead hegemony ship moved closer, its dark hull bristling with weapons. You have 10 minutes to begin evacuation procedures. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your station and all personnel. Zara walked to the communication console. Open a channel. Ambassador, Captain Chen said urgently. Maybe we should evacuate. Get everyone to safety and let the main fleet deal with this. The nearest council fleet is 6 hours away, Zara replied. We don't have that kind of time. The communication channel opened and Zara's image appeared on screens throughout both fleets. This is Ambassador Zara of the Galactic Council. I'm authorized to negotiate on behalf of all species present. The response came quickly. A figure appeared on the main screen that made several crew members step back in shock. The Skarn commander was humanoid but clearly predatory. His skin was covered in natural armor plating and his eyes held the cold intelligence of a born killer. I am War Leader Krex of the Skarn hegemony, he said, his voice like grinding metal. There will be no negotiation. You will surrender or die. War Leader Krex, Zara said, her voice remaining steady. I understand your position, but perhaps we can find a mutually beneficial solution. The materials being extracted here could be valuable to your people as well. Krex laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Weak species always try to bargain. The hegemony takes what it wants. Your council has grown soft, sending children to do warriors' work. Around the command center, the mixed crew watched their ambassador face down the most dangerous military force in known space. To most of them, she looked small and fragile compared to the armored Skarn warrior. You're right about one thing, Zara said, and something in her tone made Captain Chen look at her more carefully. The council has grown comfortable. Peace makes people forget important lessons. Then you understand why you must surrender, Krex replied. Your species is young, weak. You have no experience with real war. Zara was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a different quality. War Leader Krex, how familiar are you with human history? Why would I care about the stories of prey animals? Because, Zara said, and for the first time since the crisis began, she smiled. It wasn't the gentle expression the other delegates knew. This smile was sharp, predatory. Humans have been at war for our entire recorded history. We've fought with stones and sticks, with swords and guns, with nuclear weapons and biological warfare. We've perfected the art of killing our own species for thousands of years. The command center had gone completely silent. Even the Throcans, who prided themselves on being warriors, were staring at their human ambassador. The difference between humans and most species, Zara continued, is that we learned to make peace with each other precisely because we were so good at war. We united not out of love, but out of the fear of what we might do to ourselves. Krex's expression had changed from amusement to interest. You speak bold words for someone commanding a mining station. I'm not commanding a mining station, War Leader, Zara said, and now her voice carried the ring of absolute authority. I'm commanding whatever force is necessary to protect the people under my care. That's what ambassadors do. We prevent wars when possible and win them when necessary. She gestured to someone off-screen, and suddenly the tactical display changed. The 12 security ships that had been in defensive positions around the station were moving into an attack, formation that made Commander Thex's eyes widen in recognition. That's the Terran Hammer formation, he whispered. But how does she know classified human military tactics? Captain Chen was beginning to understand. She pulled up Zara's personnel file on her personal tablet and ran it through military databases instead of diplomatic ones. What she found made her blood run cold. War Leader Krex, Zara said, you have one chance to withdraw from this system. Leave now and no one has to die today. You threaten me with 12 small ships? I'm not threatening you with ships, Zara replied. I'm threatening you with the tactical knowledge of someone who spent 15 years in the Terran Defense Force before becoming a diplomat. Someone who commanded a battle fleet during the Centauri Rebellion. Someone who has been preparing for this exact scenario since the day humans joined the galactic community. The silence stretched for long seconds. Finally, Krex spoke. What are you saying, human? Zara's smile grew wider. I'm saying that you're about to learn why Earth's most experienced military commanders often become our diplomats. We understand peace because we excel at war. The tension in the command center was so thick it felt like breathing liquid. War Leader Krex stared at Zara through the communication link, his predatory features showing the first signs of uncertainty. Around the mining station, his 57 warships maintained their threatening positions. But something had shifted in the dynamic. You claim to be a warrior, Krex said slowly. Yet you chose the path of words over weapons. I chose the path that saves the most lives, Zara replied. But make no mistake, War Leader. Every diplomat carries the potential for violence. We just prefer not to use it. Commander Thex was studying his tactical displays with growing amazement. The 12 human security ships had moved into a formation he recognized from classified military archives. It was a pattern designed to maximize damage against a larger force while minimizing losses. The kind of tactic that required years of combat experience to execute properly. Ambassador, he said quietly, this formation requires perfect timing and coordination. One mistake and the ships will be destroyed. Then we won't make mistakes, Zara said without taking her eyes off the screen. Captain Chen had been running searches through military databases, and what she found was staggering. Ambassador Zara wasn't just some diplomat with a background in military theory. She was Colonel Zara Martinez, hero of the Centauri Rebellion, winner of the Solar Cross for Valor, and one of the most decorated officers in human military history. Why? Chen whispered. Why hide this? Why become a diplomat? Zara heard her but kept her attention on Krex. Because someone needs to build the peace that soldiers die for. And sometimes the people best qualified to make peace are those who understand the true cost of war. On the screen, War Leader Krex was conferring with his subordinates. The Skarn military operated on a strict hierarchy, where strength was the only currency that mattered. But Krex was smart enough to recognize when he faced someone who understood warfare at his level. You interest me, human, he said finally. But interest does not equal fear. Your 12 ships cannot defeat my fleet. You're absolutely right, Zara agreed. In a straight battle, you would win. But, War Leader, how familiar are you with human military philosophy? Enlighten me. Zara walked to the tactical display and highlighted several positions around the mining station. Humans have a saying, if you find yourself in a fair fight, your tactics suck. Suddenly, space around the hegemony fleet began to light up. What had appeared to be empty space revealed itself as a carefully orchestrated trap. Mines that had been disguised as asteroids activated. Hidden weapon platforms that looked like communication relays powered up. Long-range missile systems concealed in the outer system came online. What is this? Krex demanded, his composure finally cracking. This is what happens when you threaten a mining operation protected by someone who spent 2 decades preparing for exactly this scenario, Zara said calmly. Did you really think the humans would establish a joint operation in contested space without contingency plans? The tactical display now showed the true situation. The hegemony fleet was surrounded by a network of hidden defenses that had been in place for months. Not enough to destroy all 57 ships, but more than enough to make victory a Pyrrhic one. The mines alone will take out 1/3 of your fleet, Zara continued. The weapon platforms will target your command ships. And while you're dealing with that, my 12 security ships will be hitting your engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. Commander Thex was staring at the display in awe. This isn't just a defensive network, he rumbled. This is a masterpiece of strategic planning. How long has this been in place? Since the day construction began, Zara replied. I may carry the title of ambassador, but I never stopped being a soldier, and soldiers prepare for every possible threat. War Leader Krex was silent for a long moment, studying his own tactical displays. Finally, he looked back at Zara with something approaching respect. You would sacrifice thousands of lives to make a point. I would sacrifice whatever is necessary to protect the people under my care, Zara said. But that's not what I want to do today. What I want is for both of us to walk away from this situation alive and with our honor intact. And how do you propose we do that? Zara smiled, and this time it was the diplomatic expression her colleagues knew. By recognizing that the galaxy is big enough for both the hegemony and the council. You're expanding because your people need resources. We're mining because our people need materials. Perhaps there's a way for both needs to be met. She gestured to Captain Chen, who brought up a stellar map showing the surrounding sectors. There are 17 uninhabited systems within 10 jumps of here. Rich in the same materials we're extracting, but without the political complications. The Council would be willing to provide coordinates and preliminary surveys in exchange for a non-aggression pact for this sector. Krex studied the map with obvious interest. You would simply give us this information? We would trade it, Zara corrected. The hegemony has expansion experience that could be valuable to Council species moving into new territories. There could be mutual benefit here. Around the command center, the mixed crew watched in amazement as their ambassador transformed a potential massacre into a negotiation. The Throkan and Valari officers exchanged glances, beginning to understand that they had seriously underestimated their human colleague. You speak of trade, Krex said, but your trap suggests you expected violence. I prepare for the worst and hope for the best, Zara replied. It's kept me alive through 3 wars and 47 diplomatic missions. The trap is insurance, war leader. Insurance that we can negotiate from a position of mutual respect rather than fear. For the first time since the crisis began, Krex laughed, and there was genuine humor in it. You are not what I expected from a council diplomat, human. Most of them would be offering unconditional surrender by now. Most of them haven't spent 15 years learning that the best way to prevent a war is to be absolutely prepared to win one. The negotiation continued for another hour. By the end, a preliminary agreement was in place. The hegemony would withdraw from the mining sector in exchange for navigation data and mineral surveys of the uninhabited systems. A formal diplomatic channel would be established between the hegemony and the council, with Zara serving as the primary contact. As the Skarn fleet prepared to withdraw, war leader Krex sent one final message. Ambassador Zara of Earth, you have earned the respect of the hegemony today. We will remember this. As will we, war leader Krex. The black ships vanished into hyperspace, leaving the mining station in stunned silence. Slowly, the hidden defenses powered down and returned to their concealed states. Commander Thex was the first to speak. Ambassador, that was extraordinary, but I have questions. I'm sure you do, Zara said, suddenly looking tired. But for now, let's focus on getting everyone back to normal operations. We'll have a full debriefing once the immediate situation is secure. As the crew dispersed to their duties, Captain Chen approached Zara privately. Colonel Martinez, she said quietly. Zara winced. Please don't use that name. That person fought wars. This person prevents them. But you're the same person. No, Zara said firmly. I'm what that person became when she decided there had to be a better way. The skills are the same, but the purpose has changed. Captain Chen nodded slowly. Will you tell them? The other species, they deserve to know who they've been working with. Zara looked out at the stars where the hegemony fleet had disappeared. Maybe someday. For now, let them think of me as Little Dove. It's easier for everyone that way. But as she walked back to her quarters, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that her carefully constructed peaceful image was beginning to crack. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she wondered what would happen when the full truth finally came to light. 6 months had passed since the hegemony incident, and the mining operation had become a model of interspecies cooperation. The story of Ambassador Zara's peaceful resolution of the crisis had spread throughout the galaxy, adding to her reputation as a skilled diplomat. But on the council station orbiting New Geneva, investigative journalist Kale Voss was digging into a story that would change everything. Kale was Altarian, a species known for their obsessive attention to detail and their inability to let go of inconsistencies. His elongated skull housed a brain capable of processing vast amounts of information simultaneously, and right now, every neural pathway was focused on Ambassador Zara's background. The timeline doesn't match, he muttered to his research assistant, a young human named David Park. According to official records, Zara Martinez graduated from the Diplomatic Academy on Europa and immediately entered council service. But there's a 15-year gap in her education history. David pulled up another file on his workstation. Maybe she took a break? Did civilian work before deciding on diplomacy? That's what I thought initially, Kale said, his three-fingered hands dancing across multiple keyboards. But look at this. He projected a series of documents into the air between them. Military transport logs show someone named Z. Martinez traveling to classified locations during those exact 15 years. Medical records show treatment for combat injuries. Financial records show hazard pay deposits. David frowned as he studied the data. You think our ambassador Zara is the same person as this Z. Martinez? I think our peaceful little dove might have some very big secrets. Meanwhile, on the council station's diplomatic levels, Zara was in her office reviewing trade agreements when her secure communication system chimed with an urgent message. The sender was listed as T. Chen Eyes Only. The message was brief. Journalist asking questions about your past. Kale Voss from Galactic Truth Network. Thought you should know. Zara sat back in her chair, staring at the message. She had always known this day would come. In an age of universal data networks and persistent journalists, secrets rarely stayed buried forever. The question was how much damage the truth would do to everything she had built. A soft chime indicated someone at her door. Come in, she called. Supreme Counselor Vex entered, his tentacles moving in patterns of polite greeting. Ambassador Zara, I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, Counselor. Please sit. She gestured to the reinforced chair designed for his species. I wanted to discuss the upcoming trade summit with the Rigel Consortium, Vex said, settling his massive form into the chair. Your success with the mining negotiations has given us considerable leverage. The other species respect your judgment. I appreciate the confidence, Zara replied, though her mind was still on the journalist's investigation. Vex studied her with his large, compound eyes. Something troubles you, Ambassador. In 3 years, I've learned to read human expressions reasonably well. Zara considered her options. Vex had always been fair with her, even when other counselors dismissed human concerns. Perhaps it was time for some honesty. Counselor, hypothetically speaking, how would the council react if they learned that a diplomat had a background that differed significantly from their official records? That would depend on the nature of the difference, Vex replied carefully. Academic discrepancies would be embarrassing but manageable. Financial improprieties would be more serious. Why do you ask? Before Zara could answer, her communication system erupted with priority alerts. Emergency signals were flooding in from across the galaxy. Something major was happening. Turn on the news feeds, Zara said urgently. The office's main screen activated, showing a Galactic Truth Network reporter standing in front of the council building. Behind him, crowds of various species were gathering, their mood clearly agitated. Explosive revelation about Ambassador Zara of Earth has sent shockwaves through the diplomatic community, the reporter was saying. Investigative journalist Kale Voss has uncovered evidence suggesting that the council's most trusted peacemaker may have a hidden military background. Vex's tentacles went rigid. Ambassador, what is this about? On the screen, Kale Voss himself appeared, standing next to a holographic display of military records. According to these documents, the woman known as Ambassador Zara is actually Colonel Zara Martinez, a highly decorated military officer responsible for numerous combat operations during humanity's expansion period. The display showed battle footage from the Centauri Rebellion, images of destroyed ships and devastated planetary surfaces. Then it showed a younger Zara in military uniform, accepting a medal from the Human Defense Force High Command. The most disturbing revelation, Kale continued, concerns the Battle of Kepler Station, where Colonel Martinez's tactical decisions resulted in the deaths of over 10,000 enemy combatants. This is the same person who has been negotiating peace treaties and trade agreements for the past 3 years. Vex turned to stare at Zara, his compound eyes reflecting shock and something approaching betrayal. Is this true? Zara met his gaze steadily. Yes, you lied to us. For 3 years, you've been lying to the entire council. I omitted parts of my background, Zara corrected. Everything I've done as ambassador has been genuine. My commitment to peace, my negotiations, my efforts to build cooperation between species, all of that has been real. The news report continued, showing more footage from Zara's military career. The reporter's voice provided commentary over images of strategic victories and tactical brilliance that had saved human colonies, but cost enemy forces dearly. The question now, the reporter said, is whether the Galactic Council can trust a diplomat who has hidden such a significant military background. Many species are calling for Ambassador Zara's immediate removal from office. Vex rose from his chair, his tentacles writhing in agitation. The other counselors will be furious. The Valari trusted you with their most sensitive trade negotiations. The Throkans shared military intelligence with you. How do we know you weren't gathering information for human military purposes? Because, Zara said calmly, everything I've done has been in the service of peace. Yes, I was a soldier. Yes, I made decisions that cost lives. But I became a diplomat specifically because I understood the true cost of those decisions. You should have told us. Would you have trusted me if you had known from the beginning? Would the other species have accepted human diplomatic proposals if they knew they came from someone who had defeated their own military forces in battle? Vex paused, his tentacles slowing their agitated movements. That is a fair point. But the deception changes everything. Outside, the crowd was growing larger. Representatives from dozens of species were gathering, and their mood was clearly turning ugly. Signs appeared demanding Zara's removal, calling her a war criminal, accusing humanity of infiltrating the council with military agents. Ambassador, Vex said formally, I'm afraid I must ask you to remain in your quarters pending a full council investigation. This is for your own safety as much as anything else. Zara nodded. I understand. But, Counselor, before you make any final judgments, remember what I accomplished in the Outer Rim. Those defensive preparations that prevented a massacre, they worked because I understood warfare well enough to prevent it. That may be true, Vex replied sadly, but trust once broken is difficult to repair. The other species will question every agreement you've negotiated, every peace you've brokered. Some may even withdraw from treaties signed with human involvement. As if summoned by his words, Zara's communication system chimed with another priority message. This one was from the Throkan Empire. Formal notice of treaty review in light of recent revelations regarding human diplomatic practices. Then another, from the Valari Collective. Suspension of all trade agreements pending investigation into human ambassadors' background. And another, from the Andromic Commonwealth. Request for immediate recall of all human diplomatic personnel. Zara watched the messages pour in, each one representing years of careful diplomatic work, unraveling in real time. Everything she had built, every relationship she had carefully cultivated was crumbling because of who she used to be. I'll escort you to your quarters, Vex said gently. The council will meet tomorrow to decide how to proceed. As they walked through the corridors of the diplomatic station, Zara could see the fear and suspicion in the eyes of alien staff members who had worked with her for years. The friendly greetings were replaced by nervous glances and hastily averted gazes. In her quarters, alone for the first time since the story broke, Zara finally allowed herself to feel the weight of what was happening. 3 years of patient work, destroyed in a single news cycle. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had hidden her military background to build trust, but the hiding itself had destroyed that same trust. Outside her window, she could see protesters gathering in the station's public areas. Tomorrow she would face the council and try to salvage what remained of humanity's diplomatic relationships. But tonight she wondered if the price of peace had always been too high to pay. The council chamber was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from every member species had traveled to attend what many were calling the most important session in galactic diplomatic history. Zara sat alone at the defendants' table, facing hundreds of hostile stares from beings who, just days before, had called her friend. Supreme Counselor Vex called the session to order, his tentacles moving in formal patterns of grave ceremony. This emergency session is convened to address the allegations concerning Ambassador Zara of Earth and the implications for council security and diplomatic integrity. The first to speak was General Korth of the Throkan Empire. His massive frame dominated the podium as he addressed the assembly. For 3 years, this human has sat in our councils, heard our military briefings, learned our defensive capabilities. We now discover she is not a diplomat but a warrior, trained in deception and conquest. The Throkan Empire demands her immediate expulsion and the review of all human diplomatic credentials. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Speaker Lin of the Valari Collective rose next, her crystalline features glowing with indignation. The Valari people pride themselves on transparency and honesty. We shared our most sensitive cultural and economic information with Ambassador Zara, believing her to be a genuine peacemaker. To learn that she was gathering intelligence under false pretenses is a betrayal of everything the Council represents. More voices joined the chorus of condemnation. The Andromic representative called for humanity's complete removal from the Council. The Proximan delegate suggested that all human negotiated treaties should be declared void. Each speaker built upon the previous accusations, painting a picture of systematic deception and potential espionage. Through it all, Zara sat quietly, her hands folded on the table before her. She had faced hostile interrogations before during her military career, but this was different. These weren't enemy soldiers trying to break her. These were friends who felt betrayed. Finally, Counselor Vex gestured for silence. Ambassador Zara, you have the right to respond to these allegations. The Council will hear your defense. Zara stood slowly and walked to the central podium. The chamber fell silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on her small human form. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly to every corner of the vast space. Honored counselors, I stand before you accused of deception, and I will not insult your intelligence by claiming innocence. I did conceal my military background when I accepted the position of Earth's ambassador. That concealment was deliberate, calculated, and yes, deceptive. The admission sent a ripple of shock through the chamber. Many had expected denials or justifications, not a direct confession. But before you pass judgment, Zara continued, I ask you to consider not just what I hid, but why I hid it, and what I have accomplished since taking this position. She activated a holographic display that showed the Council's diplomatic achievements over the past 3 years. The Outer Rim Accords, which ended a century of territorial disputes, the Proximan Trade Agreement, which increased prosperity for 17 species, the Cultural Exchange Protocols, which have prevented 6 potential conflicts through improved understanding. The display shifted to show economic data, casualty reports, and stability indices. In 3 years, Council space has seen a 40% reduction in armed conflicts, a 60% increase in interspecies trade, and the successful integration of 4 new member species. These achievements were not accomplished by deception, but by understanding. General Korth interrupted, his voice booming across the chamber. Understanding gained through military training. You used warrior skills to manipulate us. Yes, Zara said simply. I used every skill I possessed to build peace. Is that not exactly what you should want in a diplomat? She paused, looking around the chamber at faces she had worked with, argued with, and grown to respect over 3 years. You ask why I concealed my background. The answer is in this very room, in your reactions today. If I had introduced myself as Colonel Martinez, hero of the Centauri Rebellion, would you have listened to my proposals for peaceful cooperation? Would you have trusted a human military officer to negotiate your trade agreements? Speaker Lin's crystalline features flickered with uncertainty. You manipulated our prejudices? I worked within them, Zara corrected. Every species in this chamber has preconceptions about military personnel. Warriors are seen as crude, aggressive, untrustworthy in matters of peace. But what if those preconceptions are wrong? What if the people who understand war best are exactly the ones who should be working hardest to prevent it? She gestured to the Throcan section. General Korth, your own people have a saying. Only the warrior knows the true cost of battle. You've commanded troops in combat. Do you seek out war, or do you work to avoid it when possible? Korth's expression was troubled. A true warrior seeks victory with minimal bloodshed. But that does not excuse your deception, doesn't it? Zara asked. In the Outer Rim, when the hegemony threatened our mining operation, I used my military knowledge to create a defensive network that prevented a massacre. Thousands of lives were saved because I understood warfare well enough to make it unnecessary. She activated another display, this one showing the hegemony negotiations. I didn't defeat war leader Krex through superior firepower. I defeated him through superior preparation and the wisdom to know when not to fight. That wisdom came from 15 years of military service, from seeing the aftermath of battles, from carrying the responsibility for soldiers' lives. The chamber was quieter now, the angry murmur replaced by thoughtful silence. Zara pressed her advantage. You're right to feel betrayed, she said. I did lie to you, and I understand your anger. But I ask you to judge me not by the secrets I kept, but by the results I achieved. Has human military knowledge been used to spy on your species? Have any of the agreements I negotiated favored Earth at your expense? Have I ever used my position to gather intelligence for military purposes? Counselor Vex spoke carefully. Your record as ambassador has been exemplary, but the principle of honesty in diplomatic relations is honored more in the breach than the observance, Zara finished. How many of you have shared the complete truth about your species' capabilities, intentions, or strategic concerns? Diplomacy has always been about managing information, revealing some truths while concealing others. The only difference is that my concealment was personal rather than political. She walked closer to the assembled delegates, her voice becoming more personal. 3 years ago, you saw a young woman from a new species, someone who seemed harmless and naive. You felt safe sharing your concerns with her because you believed she posed no threat. But what you were really responding to was competence disguised as innocence. The display changed again, showing detailed analyses of the various crises Zara had resolved. Every negotiation, every peace treaty, every trade agreement was built on a foundation of strategic thinking that came from military training. You trusted me not despite my background, but because of it. You just didn't know it at the time. Speaker Lin rose from her seat. But the deception itself undermines everything. How can we trust anything you've told us? Because, Zara said, everything I've told you has been verified by results. I didn't ask you to trust my words. I asked you to trust my actions. And those actions have consistently served the cause of peace. She returned to the central podium and faced the full assembly. I became a diplomat because I learned, through 15 years of military service, that peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of justice, understanding, and mutual respect. Those things don't happen by accident. They require the same strategic thinking, the same careful planning, the same attention to detail that military campaigns demand. The chamber was completely silent now. Hundreds of beings who had entered demanding her expulsion were now grappling with uncomfortable questions about their own assumptions and prejudices. I ask for your judgment, Zara concluded, not as the naive diplomat you thought you knew, but as the experienced peacemaker I actually am. Judge me by the peace I've helped build, the lives I've helped save, and the future I've helped secure. And ask yourselves, do you want diplomats who understand the cost of failure, or diplomats who have never faced the consequences of their mistakes? As she returned to her seat, the chamber erupted in dozens of languages as delegates argued among themselves. The simple narrative of betrayal and deception had become something far more complex, and the council would have to decide not just Zara's fate, but what kind of diplomacy they actually wanted for the future. The council chamber buzzed with heated debates as delegates argued in clusters throughout the vast space. Some species huddled together, their translators working overtime to process the rapid exchanges of opinion. Others stood apart, clearly wrestling with the implications of Zara's revelation. Supreme Counselor Vex called for order, but it took several minutes for the assembly to settle. When relative quiet returned, he addressed the chamber with the gravity of someone carrying an enormous burden. The council will now hear statements from species representatives before we proceed to deliberation, he announced. Each delegation may present their position on the matter before us. The first to speak was an unexpected voice. Ambassador Thylos of the Centauri Republic rose slowly from his seat. His species had been among those defeated by human forces during the expansion wars, and his presence at this session carried special weight. Honored counselors, Thylos began, his melodic voice carrying clearly across the chamber. My people have unique experience with Colonel Martinez's military service. Our fleets faced her tactical brilliance during the Centauri Rebellion 15 years ago. A hush fell over the assembly. Many had forgotten that the Centaurians were among Zara's former enemies. I speak not as someone who admires the Colonel's victories, Thylos continued, but as someone who respects her conduct in war. When our capital city fell, she could have ordered its destruction. Instead, she negotiated the surrender that saved 3 million civilian lives. When our military leadership was captured, she could have demanded unconditional submission. Instead, she worked with our provisional government to establish terms that preserve Centauri dignity and autonomy. He paused, his large eyes scanning the chamber. The woman who defeated us in war is the same woman who later negotiated the Mutual Defense Pact that protects our colonies today. Perhaps the question is not whether we can trust someone who hid their military background, but whether we can afford to lose someone who understands both war and peace so completely. The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. No one had expected support from that quarter. General Korth stood next, his massive frame radiating authority. The Throkan Empire has prided itself on military honor for millennia. Deception in warfare is acceptable, even necessary. But deception among allies— He paused, his forearms crossing in a gesture of deep contemplation. However, he continued, honor also demands recognition of competence. The defensive network Ambassador Zara established in the Outer Rim was masterful. It prevented a war that could have consumed dozens of systems. The Throkan Empire values results above protocol. Her methods were questionable, but her achievements are undeniable. Speaker Lin of the Valari rose gracefully, her crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights in complex patterns. The Valari Collective has always believed in transparency and truth. We are disturbed by the deception, but we are also forced to acknowledge that some truths are difficult to accept. Her voice carried a note of painful honesty. Would we have treated Ambassador Zara differently if we had known her background from the beginning? Yes. Would we have given her the same opportunities to prove her commitment to peace? Probably not. Our own prejudices would have prevented us from seeing her true capabilities. The debate continued for hours. Species after species rose to voice their positions, their concerns, their fears, and their grudging admiration. The pattern that emerged was complex. Betrayal mixed with respect, anger tempered by results, fear balanced against necessity. During a recess, Zara found herself approached by an unexpected visitor. War leader Krex of the Skarn hegemony had requested permission to address the council via secure communication link. His image appeared on the chamber's main screen, his predatory features as intimidating as ever. Counselors of the galactic community, he began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to absolute command. The hegemony rarely involves itself in council politics, but this matter concerns us directly. The chamber fell silent. The hegemony's opinion could shift the entire debate. Ambassador Zara defeated me without firing a shot, Krex continued. Not through deception or trickery, but through superior strategy and the wisdom to offer alternatives to bloodshed. She displayed the qualities my people respect most: strength, intelligence, and honor in victory. His image leaned forward, as if addressing the council directly. You debate whether to trust a warrior who became a diplomat. The hegemony asks why you would question the loyalty of someone who chose to build peace rather than claim conquest. We have established trade relations with the council specifically because we respect the strength we saw in her leadership. The implication was clear. Remove Zara, and the fragile peace with the hegemony might be at risk. As the formal debate resumed, a new voice requested recognition. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's senior diplomatic advisor, had arrived with a classified data packet that she requested permission to present. Counselors, she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment, I bring evidence that may clarify the questions surrounding Ambassador Zara's appointment and background. The main screen displayed a series of classified documents, bearing the seals of multiple Earth governments and the Galactic Council's own intelligence services. These records show that Ambassador Zara's military background was not unknown to Council security, Dr. Vasquez revealed. Her appointment was approved at the highest levels after extensive psychological evaluation and security clearance. The decision to allow her background to remain classified was made jointly by Earth and Council leadership. The chamber exploded in shocked voices. Councilor Vex's tentacles writhed in agitation as he processed this revelation. The reasoning, Dr. Vasquez continued, was that her military experience would be valuable in diplomatic roles, but that knowledge of her background might prejudice other species against her effectiveness. It was decided that her competence should be judged by her diplomatic actions, not her military history. General Korth's voice boomed across the chamber. You're saying the council leadership knew all along? Not all leadership, Dr. Vasquez corrected. A select few with appropriate security clearances. The decision was made to protect both the ambassador's effectiveness and the council's interests. Speaker Lin's crystalline features flickered rapidly, indicating intense emotional processing. So we were not just deceived by Ambassador Zara, but by our own leadership. You were protected from prejudices that might have prevented you from giving one of the galaxy's most effective diplomats a fair chance to prove herself. Dr. Vasquez replied firmly. Counselor Vex rose slowly, his massive form conveying the weight of difficult decisions. This information changes the nature of our deliberations. We are not just judging Ambassador Zara's actions, but examining our own assumptions about military service and diplomatic capability. He looked around the chamber at delegates who had spent hours debating trust, deception, and the nature of peace itself. Before we proceed to final deliberations, I ask each delegation to consider this question. Do we want diplomats who understand the full spectrum of interspecies relations, including its military aspects? Or do we prefer representatives who approach these matters with theoretical knowledge alone? The chamber fell silent as hundreds of beings contemplated a question that went to the heart of what they expected from their leaders. The answer would determine not just Zara's fate, but the future of galactic diplomacy itself. Outside the chamber windows, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the struggles of the civilizations that sought to find their place among them. But inside, the representatives of dozens of species grappled with questions that would shape the galaxy's future. What is the relationship between war and peace? Can trust survive deception? And what qualities do they really want in those who speak for them among the stars? The debate was far from over, but the nature of the questions had fundamentally changed. It was no longer about punishing deception, but about defining the kind of leadership the galaxy needed for the challenges ahead. After 3 days of deliberation, the Galactic Council reconvened for the final session. The chamber was even more crowded than before, with representatives from species across the galaxy gathered to witness what many considered a pivotal moment in diplomatic history. The decision would not only determine Zara's fate, but establish precedents that would guide galactic politics for generations. Supreme Counselor Vex took his position at the central podium, his tentacles moving in formal patterns as he prepared to deliver the council's verdict. The massive chamber fell completely silent, thousands of beings from dozens of species waiting to learn how their representatives had chosen to address questions of trust, deception, and the nature of leadership itself. After extensive deliberation, Vex began, his voice carrying the weight of collective decision. The Galactic Council has reached a consensus on the matter of Ambassador Zara Martinez of Earth. He paused, his compound eyes scanning the assembly before continuing. The Council finds that Ambassador Zara did indeed conceal significant aspects of her background when accepting her diplomatic position. This concealment constitutes a violation of standard disclosure protocols and has understandably damaged trust between species that had formed close working relationships with her. Zara sat motionless in her chair, her expression calm despite the enormity of the moment. Around the chamber, delegates leaned forward, hanging on every word. However, Vex continued, the Council also finds that Ambassador Zara's diplomatic achievements over the past 3 years demonstrate exceptional competence, unwavering commitment to peaceful resolution of conflicts, and consistent action in the best interests of galactic stability. The Councilor's tentacles shifted to patterns indicating complex decision-making as he delivered the core of their ruling. The Council has determined that the Ambassador's military background, rather than disqualifying her from diplomatic service, has enhanced her effectiveness in preventing conflicts and building lasting peace. Her strategic knowledge has been used exclusively in service of diplomatic goals, never for intelligence gathering or military advantage for her species. Murmurs began to ripple through the chamber, but Vex raised a tentacle for silence. Therefore, the Council's decision is as follows. Ambassador Zara Martinez will retain her position in diplomatic authority, subject to new protocols designed to address the concerns raised by this incident. The announcement triggered an explosion of voices in dozens of languages. Some delegates appeared relieved, others shocked, and a few clearly angry. Vex waited for the noise to subside before continuing. These new protocols will require full disclosure of relevant background information for all future diplomatic appointments. However, the Council recognizes that military experience, properly channeled, can be valuable in preventing conflicts and understanding the true costs of diplomatic failure. General Korth rose from his seat, his massive frame commanding attention. What guarantees do we have that this decision serves justice rather than expedience? The same guarantee we have always had, Vex replied. The results of our diplomats' actions. Ambassador Zara's record speaks for itself. The peace she has helped build, the conflicts she has prevented, the lives she has saved through negotiation rather than warfare. Speaker Lin's crystalline features glowed as she stood, The Valari Collective accepts the Council's decision, but we request formal protocols to prevent similar situations in the future. Agreed, Vex said. The new disclosure requirements will ensure transparency, while recognizing that diverse backgrounds can strengthen diplomatic capabilities. As the formal session concluded, delegates began forming small groups throughout the chamber, discussing the implications of the decision. Many approached Zara directly, some to offer congratulations, others to express continued concerns, and a few to apologize for their initial reactions. Ambassador Thylos of the Centauri Republic was among the first to reach her. Ambassador Martinez, he said, using her full name for the first time in public. The Centauri Republic looks forward to continued cooperation under the new protocols. General Korth followed, extending one of his massive hands. The Throkan Empire respects strength whether in war or peace. You have demonstrated both. But perhaps the most significant moment came when war leader Krex's image appeared on a portable communication device. His predatory features showed something approaching satisfaction as he addressed Zara directly. Ambassador Martinez, he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. The hegemony is pleased that the Council chose wisdom over prejudice. Our trade negotiations will continue as planned. As the crowds began to disperse, Supreme Counselor Vex approached Zara privately. This was not an easy decision, he said. Many delegates had strong feelings about the deception. I understand, Zara replied, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to continue serving. The new protocols are fair and necessary. There is one more matter, Vex continued. The Council has decided to create a new position, Special Advisor for Conflict Prevention. The role would involve working with species that have military backgrounds to help them transition into diplomatic service. The Council believes your experience makes you uniquely qualified. Zara considered the offer carefully. You want me to help train warrior diplomats? We want you to help us build a diplomatic corps that understands the full spectrum of interspecies relations, Vex corrected. Peace is too important to be left only to those who have never faced the consequences of its failure. 3 months later, Zara stood once again in the Outer Rim, but this time the scene was different. The mining operation had evolved into a full diplomatic training facility, where representatives from species across the galaxy came to learn advanced negotiation techniques. Military officers studied alongside traditional diplomats, learning to channel their strategic thinking into peaceful solutions. Captain Chen, now promoted to Diplomatic Corps Liaison, approached with the day's reports. The new class includes 2 former Throkan generals, a Valari war dancer, and 3 human special operations veterans. They're all adapting well to the curriculum. Good, Zara said, watching as a mixed group of former warriors worked together on a simulated trade dispute. How are the other species responding to the program? Better than expected. Turns out we're not the only species that's been wondering about the gap between military and diplomatic thinking. The Andromics are sending their entire diplomatic staff for cross-training. Through the observation window, Zara could see her students engaged in heated but controlled debate over resource allocation scenarios. Former enemies worked side by side, their military backgrounds giving them insight into the real costs of diplomatic failure. Ambassador, Chen said quietly, do you ever regret the way things turned out? The controversy, the investigation having your past exposed. Zara watched as a Throkan general and a Valari artist found common ground in their understanding of strategic planning. No, she said finally. The truth was always going to come out eventually. Better that it led to something constructive than destructive. A communication alert chimed and Zara accepted the incoming message. It was from journalist Kale Voss, whose investigation had started the entire controversy. Ambassador Martinez, his recorded message began, I wanted to follow up on the story that changed galactic diplomacy. The program you've created has become a model for conflict prevention. Would you be willing to participate in a documentary about the intersection of military experience and diplomatic service? Zara smiled and made a note to respond later. The young Altarian journalist had inadvertently created exactly the kind of transparency that would serve the galaxy well in the future. As the day's training sessions concluded, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had begun as a soldier, learned the costs of war, and chose to dedicate her life to preventing those costs. The revelation of her background had nearly destroyed everything she had built, but in the end, It had led to something even more valuable, a new understanding of what true diplomacy required. The stars outside the training facility continued their eternal dance, and somewhere among them, species that had once been enemies were learning to work together, guided by leaders who understood both the price of war and the value of peace. It wasn't the ending Zara had expected when she first walked into the council chamber as a harmless diplomat. But it was exactly the ending the galaxy needed. The little dove had revealed her true nature, and in doing so, had taught the galaxy that sometimes the best guardians of peace are those who have seen the alternative up close. The war recording had indeed exposed everything, not just about Zara, but about the assumptions and prejudices that had shaped galactic diplomacy for centuries. And in that exposure, a stronger, more honest foundation for peace had been built.